Strength isn't just about lifting heavier weights, it's about building a body that performs, adapts, and lasts for decades. Welcome to the Axis Method, a Strength Axis production. I'm your host, John Parker, certified strength and conditioning specialist, Strong First Elite, beast tamer, and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. I've been a private strength coach for over 17 years here in San Diego, California, and I've dedicated my life to the pursuit and mastery of strength and conditioning. My approach has always been functional and sustainable, combining intelligent training, lifestyle practices, and recovery strategies to help people build real strength and long-term health. This podcast is where we explore the science, philosophy, and practice of strength. From barbell training and kettlebells to variable resistance, metabolic health, and the deeper principles that drive performance and longevity. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Harambe System. Harambe System is a compact variable resistance training platform built around two core pieces of engineering. The Cyberplate, a stainless steel base with 12 precision rollers, and a patented pulley and sling system that spins smoothly and opens wide for easy loading of stacked bands. Together, they are designed to bridge the gap between bands and weights, combining the joint-friendly feel of bands with smoother, more consistent loading. And it works. Users are pulling 400-plus pound deadlifts, benching over 225 pounds, and back squatting over 300 pounds, training exclusively with this system. Most band platforms are static edges that create friction, wear out your bands, and reduce tension at the bottom of the lift. The Cyberplate addresses that by routing the band across spinning rollers instead of fixed edges, helping deliver more consistent resistance from the first rep to the last. Research shows that full range of motion under real tension is what drives muscle growth. And a 2025 study confirmed that as long as tension is present through the full range of motion, muscles grow regardless of where peak resistance falls. That is the principle the system is engineered around. Learn more at harambesystem.com/John Parker Ballistic. And over the past 2 years, variable resistance training has completely changed the way I look at strength. What I thought would be a simple experiment turned into a complete shift in philosophy. I realized I could build muscle, maintain strength, and express power without constantly beating up my joints or feeling wrecked from training. More importantly, it forced me to become a better lifter. Variable resistance exposes sloppy movement immediately. You can't just rely on momentum and ego. It demands intention, control, and real mind-muscle connection. It also taught me to auto-regulate naturally. Some days are high output. Some days require more control, better positioning, and cleaner movement. The system adapts with you instead of trapping you inside fixed loading patterns. That's become a huge part of the Strength Axis philosophy. Train with the energy you actually have, not the energy you wish you had. I also appreciate how much it allows me to explore movement and challenge range of motion in a way that feels athletic instead of restrictive. Training feels more like practice and less like punishment. For me, the goal isn't just getting stronger, it's staying strong while still having energy to hike, ride, explore, and live a capable life outside of the gym. So if you're interested in building real strength, protecting your body, and applying intelligent training principles, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Axis Method. Right, welcome everyone back to the Axis Method. This is episode 10, and today we're going to be discussing mental health, discipline, and building a life worth living. When I was making the outline for this podcast, I decided that I wasn't going to go off of any of the prior podcasts that I've listened to on mental health or psychology, and instead relay all this information in terms of what I've experienced as a coach from very happy and healthy people that I've trained oftentimes for many years. I'm also going to talk a little bit about my own journey and to make sure that I am not a victim of stinking thinking and instead have a gratitude practice and am really joyful to do the things that I want to do in my life and to be a coach for other people based on my experiences. So with that said, I want to say that mental health is one of the biggest conversations in modern culture, and it should be because everyone seems to go through hard times, but it's really about how we react to those hard times and then push through to our next goal or to our next phase in life. So this episode is not clinical psychology or therapy advice, so please do not take it as that. I am a strength and health coach and not a medical professional. So always consult your medical professional if there are some extreme issues going on in your life. But again, I want to relay the wisdom from coaching from nearly 2 decades and working people with a vast diversity from age group to profession and even culturally. I've observed a lot of the patterns in these healthy and fulfilled humans. And if I had to make this a thesis, I would say that mental health isn't always the obstacle. Sometimes it's the path that teaches you how to live better. And this podcast will explore those ideas. So I hope it's meaningful for you because it was very meaningful for me to explore these ideas, again, based off of my experience. So in the first segment, I want to talk about what I've learned from some of my older clients. And if we had to put an age range on these people, I would say anywhere between 60 and about 85 years young. Unfortunately, things today aren't as they were when maybe we were kids or the older generation experience. We have the internet now, we have AI to help us out with everything. And things are just not the same as they were. I am at the beginning of the millennial age, and I do remember the old ways of how our parents worked hard. We had black and white TVs when I was a kid. And again, things have changed. Kids grow up on iPads and iPhones nowadays and on video game systems. So some of this stuff might not apply to the younger generation, but I think we can take lessons from the older generations who have a lot more stability in their life, maybe spiritually and psychologically, and try and apply those lessons to today. All right, first, I want to discuss common patterns that I have witnessed in happier older adults. And the first thing is social connection. A lot of my clients, I'll ask them on a Monday what's on the agenda for the week. And I'm always surprised that a lot of people have very rich social lives, whether they're going out to eat with their friends, they're going to a play one night, or they're going to a concert, or even a baseball game. These are common things that I hear from my happier clients. And I just think that's something to remark on that they have very rich friendships in their social circles and they're very active in their relationships. And that might be they're a member of a club and they do something on a weekly basis like tennis, or they have a knitting club or a book club. But the active relationships really seem to matter. There's a lot of talk about blue zones and what these people in these blue zones do that end up living past 100 years of life. And it's really interesting because it's not biohacking and the diet stuff, it can be controversial. But one thing is they have very rich social lives. Whatever they're doing, it's not just about living a solitary life, but it's about communing with others. And humans are social creatures because we can't survive on our own. And this idea of the cowboy in the American West doing everything himself, it just didn't exist in any meaningful way that we can draw conclusions from because the cowboy might have been independent doing his thing like a desperado, but someone had to make his six shooter. He had to get supplies from somewhere. And it's important to realize that we cannot do anything alone, even though we may think that we can. So my clients have really exemplified this to me that they're part of a bigger community and they're a piece of that and they can contribute and everyone else can contribute to their lives as well. And that's been a very meaningful lesson for me that community is very important, especially nowadays where we could just live at home and live on the internet for our entire life. But I guarantee we wouldn't have the same joy as if we were with our friends on a weekly or daily basis. So staying engaged with people, I put that as an utmost important thing for mental health. And leading into that, let's talk about physical activity. A lot of my clients don't just train alone. They train with someone like me. They have a workout club that they're engaged in. I mentioned the tennis club. That is an example of one of my long-term clients is a member of a tennis club, and he'd be playing tennis 3 or 4 times a week. And it's not only about the sport, it's about communing with his buddies and having this shared obligation or opportunity to improve himself. The consistent exercise piece is also of utmost importance because I would say that people with better mental health make exercise a huge part of their routine. And I'm not going to say that you have to do hardcore strength training like I teach at Strength Axis. I think people who walk together, run together, surf together, or in my case, mountain bike with my buddies is a huge component because the shared mental struggle of doing something difficult bonds you closer to the people that you're doing it with. And if you want to feel better, if you get outside and you do the thing, I guarantee you're not going to be focusing on your problems when you have a steep downhill in front of you or a steep uphill that you need to hike to. It's just a really easy way of improving your mental health to do something difficult. So consistent exercise, we could go on a whole podcast about that, but I'm going to leave it to you to maybe finesse your own routine into getting to that place as probably the easiest means of improving mental health. A lot of my clients have also exemplified that movement is part of their identity. It's not something that they're obligated to do, rather that they want to do it. And I've seen the healthiest people in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s never question whether or not they should exercise because, again, it wasn't an obligation. It's just something that they started to do when they were very young and they never stopped doing it. And it's always funny because I joke with these people about, well, you could have trained, but you were busy or you're feeling lazy. And that was just never an option for these people. But we hear that excuse all the time. I'm too busy to exercise. It's really tricky to talk about this because if you start early and you never stop, you're definitely going to be healthier in your body and in your brain. However, that doesn't mean if you haven't exercised consistently in your life that you cannot start now and reap the exact same benefits. I have just noticed those that I really respect that I have worked with for a long term basis. They started early and they never stopped and they just have abundant health. And it's not just the physical, it's also the mental. It maintains a lot of mental sharpness. I think staying physically capable is also a huge component of mental health because when you're not worried that you're going to fall and you've lost balance, or you could do basic stuff around the house, or even travel in an airport without issues, that's going to be a huge win. That's a long term win because you know you're not going to have to rely on others as you get older and you just feel younger overall. Now, another key trait is curiosity and learning. I trained a client, and he was probably in his early to mid 70s at the time. We trained for several years. And this guy was a venture capitalist. He was very successful, he was very wealthy. But what I loved about him is he just never lost his childhood curiosity. He was constantly asking me questions and genuinely interested in what I had to say and asking follow up questions to crazy training stuff that I would tell him. And he would always use the word fascinating. And I love that. I started using that word fascinating and this genuine curiosity. That word really exemplifies that he wanted to learn. Even though he had a career of probably 50 plus years, this guy had been an All American football player. He had a very successful business on the East Coast, and he had a home on the West Coast here in La Jolla, California, where I trained him. And he was just always busy. He would never say no to any exercises. I would try and calm him down on certain exercises, but he genuinely wanted to get better. And we did it, of course, based on what he wanted to do for his goals, but I would push him just enough. But what I loved about him is he had so many interesting stories. And I almost saw my role as not just being a coach, but the conversation of asking these questions and allowing him to pull from his memory bank and express these ideas and these stories to me. And what I think about that is that it keeps you mentally sharp when you're constantly using your brain to remember things, to come up with new ideas, and to converse. That is a huge component to mental health because you're no longer thinking about woe is me, and instead you're interacting with another human. And it's just a really fond memory for me of this particular person that he was so curious and it reinstilled in me. And this is probably maybe 5 years ago, but to be curious and genuinely listen to someone when they talk or want to explain something to you, even if it's an esoteric idea. I have one client who always tells me about high level programming because he is a chief technology officer. And I start to understand some of it, but a lot of it's over my head. But I just keep on listening because at this point, I know something about computer programming because I've been listening to this guy for so long. And he gets a lot of joy out of explaining this. And I know when he explains it, it makes it more clear in his head. And relating this back to mental health, when you are able to express these ideas and your brain is truly firing, I believe your brain is just healthier. And when the brain is slow and you have brain fog and other physical limitations which are kind of harming you, that's when things like depression can set in or stinking thinking, as we like to say. So I think the curiosity is a huge component. And with the curiosity, sharing your personal experiences and teaching others what to do can make your brain much healthier and rewired to a great degree. Now, I would say that all of these clients have taught me that you need to continue learning, that you're forever a student. And that is why I read every single day. And I don't just read stuff on fitness anymore. I'm actually kind of sick of that. I read things on history, on geology, or whatever captures my brain at the time. I just like to read. And it's been a really great thing for me to be able to speak about all these varied subjects with my clients. And again, we converse. And when you converse with other people, you are building community, you're building and deepening friendships, and it makes your brain work better. And it's a huge key to mental health that I'll keep on saying throughout this podcast. Now, finally, we're still learning, we're still asking questions, and we keep an open mind. That's what these clients have taught me. And I just feel so lucky to have all of these mentors. And one phrase I do want to say is I think you should keep an open mind, but do not keep an open mind open so much that your brains fall out. That's a funny quote. I will quote to that in the show notes. We need to keep an open mind, but don't believe everything that you hear. That's important. Now, another key component I've learned from my clients is to adventure and experience. And I've had a lot of clients who are world travelers. I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of world travel myself, but travel makes you try new things in a different light. You're out of maybe your stress zone, your work, where you live, and you're trying new things that you would have never tried before, whether that's food or cultural experiences or certain styles of dance or even drinks or doing something physical like sailing on the ocean or rock climbing. All that stuff is fantastic because, again, when we get out of the mold that may be causing us mental harm or stress, that's when we can truly start to expand. I think it really opens up the door to new hobbies, new experiences, outdoor specialty, and a lot of novelty. I've experienced my happiest clients, or I should say, most joyful clients, are people who are willing to do a little bit of travel. That doesn't mean you have to travel all the time or go international. For me, I prefer to do road trips here in California or the Western states. But seeing a new horizon will expand the horizon of your mind. I truly believe that. And it's something that we can all do. You don't have to go very far. Maybe you just try something in your own city, and that makes your day perk up. Now, with my clients, I've also seen a lot of meaningful work and financial security. I've mentioned on the podcast before that having money concerns is probably one of the worst stresses. In my own case, I never say no to a client. I always try and accommodate people. And that's not only for me being a professional, but it's also because I want to have financial stability in my life. There's been a time when I was much younger when I had credit card debt and I finally paid that off and I said never again. And I'm still running on that at age 40. I will never be in debt again. I want to have enough resources to have really high quality food and a high quality experience with Diana. That's what is important to me. I'm sure it's important to you as well. A lot of my clients, you can imagine, are pretty wealthy people, and they've actually taught me a lot because you don't get wealthy by spending money. You get wealthy by saving and investing your money. I would say all of my clients are role models with that, and even my family, and making sure they're not in debt and paying off their homes early. It's really important. I would say if you're able to be financially secure in whatever way possible, that might mean doing more work than you want to or saving more than you want to, that is probably one of those things that is going to improve mental health right away when you're not constantly struggling for money. Now, again, I'm not a financial advisor whatsoever. My thought is just always, I want to live like a minimalist, only the things I need, maybe some of the things that I want, but also not overspending my income on things that I don't need. That will not make me happy in the long term. I know family makes me happy, great relationships make me happy, experiences make me extremely joyful. And that's much more important than me driving a killer car on the road to impress people I don't even like. And I hope that resonates with you. Eventually, you have to learn that. With my clients, I've seen them work very hard early, and they might have started their career and even retired sometimes in their 50s. But it's funny when I mention the word retire, all of my clients who are retired early are never really retired. They're still doing a lot of consulting, they're managing their own money in the stock market or their other investments. And again, I think the people who are busier tend to be a lot happier because they have a passion and a purpose on a day to day basis. And I've seen this more times than I can mention. But this idea leads into delayed gratification. This is something I had to learn in my 20s and 30s, and I'm still learning it. But the most important things, they really come from delayed gratification. I always use fitness as an example. Someone might want to have a six pack and be jacked and shredded for whatever reason, but you can't buy that. And if you do buy it, everyone's going to know it's fake. You have to earn it. And sweat equity is extremely important. So think of all the applications of delayed gratification in life. I think it's very important to think about that stuff. For me, I don't really want anything unless I have to work for it. It's just not worth it. Now, I've seen from my clients, they built a lot of stability in their lives with their finances, and whatever phase they were in when they achieved that, that stability is a foundation for the rest of your life. You tend to have to work very hard in the beginning, and hopefully that sets the habit early. This truly reduces a lot of long-term chaos and stress. And my major observation is that the healthiest older people usually stayed engaged with life overall, with all the things that we just talked about. Let's move on to discipline equals freedom. Now, I originally reframed this. I'm going to reframe this section rather from Jocko Willink. Jocko Willink initially said discipline equals freedom. And, hardcore Navy SEAL retired commander, and he currently has a podcast. He posts a picture of his watch every morning at like 4:30 in the morning of him working out. I think this is a very important concept though, because a lot of people might think that chaos equals freedom, but what he means by discipline equals freedom is when you have your bed made, when you have your clothes laid out, now you are free to express what's next in your day that you need to accomplish. Those might be good examples. And I'm a real believer in this. I think that you need to take care of home base first before you can now express your gifts to the world. Again, it's like having your own cup filled before you try and fill other people's cups. A personal example is I typically wake up maybe an hour and a half before my first client, which is usually around 6 a.m. And the reason I do that is because I want to do my morning routine every morning with getting ready for work. I read before, I stretch, I write before, because I need to fill my cup first. And I would love to hear what you do to fill your cup first, but discipline equals freedom. I don't want to talk about this as a punishment thing or a grind culture thing. People know about Cameron Haynes or even David Goggins to an extent, and I really respect these guys. They get after it, and they're probably both in their 50s at this point doing this crazy exercise and having this crazy discipline. The only issue I see with that is for someone like myself, who's already very type A, if I follow their lead, I am going to bury myself with fatigue and stress, and my central nervous system is going to be shot. I think their example might be good for someone who's doing nothing with their life, especially with the exercise stuff. But there is this middle path that we are able to learn to walk through as we get older and with some maturity. In Buddhism, it was this idea that life is not black or white, it's a certain shade of gray. And this is the middle path. And you can find the middle path in everything. When I first heard of this philosophy, it was so difficult for me to reconcile with because I was a very black and white person. But at my age now, and through a lot of self-work on my own mental health, I see the middle path that I don't need to be too type A, but I also don't need to be type B, or in between is really the sweet spot for me where I know when I need to push and I know when I need to pull. And that's a big lesson for mental health. I would say that discipline is structure, reliability, stability, and reducing chaos. And what are the ways that we can do that? I think having a firm morning and evening routine, that's a big piece of advice I've given a lot of my clients who are struggling with this, especially with nutrition, eating the same things day in and day out. When we have this base that we can operate from, everything else seems to fall into place. I always say that training early in the day is better too, because when you eat the frog, so to speak, you do your hardest thing early in the day. The rest of the day, you're not going to want to make poor decisions with your nutrition. You might even be too tired to have the same levels of stress later on in the day. But again, that's an example of filling your cup first. And that structure produces a lot of reliability and stability. And I would say reduces the chaos of the rest of your day to do that stuff for you first. Next, I want to talk about what having your shit together actually means. Let me list off a couple things. Maybe paying your bills on time, keeping promises to yourself, a consistent routine, having a healthy body and a healthy mind, an organized environment, emotional regulation, and physical competence. I love those things as a piece of just having your shit together altogether. But these things tend to help mental health because if you don't have this stuff in order, chaos creates a lot of of stress in life, especially with inconsistent sleep. That's going to harm everything. Financial instability. Again, I mentioned that's one of the biggest stressors that we all have. Poor health habits, that might lead to a major health problem. And if you have 99 problems and one of them is a major health problem, you just have one problem. Isolation. This is a plight of our current era, especially with young men and women, but even people that I train right now. And endless distraction. That is the iPhone or the iPad or whatever device that you are addicted to. The structure really creates stability. I would say that using fitness as the gateway discipline is a really important metric. I always refer to fitness as the umbrella because when you have an umbrella, the training over your head, everything else is going to trickle down in your life. And here's what I mean. It's going to teach consistency in other areas of your life, especially nutrition and structuring your day. It's going to create resilience and durability with your body and your mind because you're always accomplishing something that's hard that maybe you didn't believe that you can do, but you train to make that happen. It is the ultimate delayed gratification because you're not going to have a six pack after 4 weeks of training. You're going to need at least a year or maybe even longer. It's going to produce a lot of confidence, especially when the muscles grow. You like the way you look, you're setting PRs in the gym, and your skill is improving. How could it not build more confidence? It's going to cause you to have higher levels of self-respect also, because you being lazy versus you training and getting after it on a regular basis, how could it not make you respect yourself more or respect the process more? It is also great for emotional regulation. I will listen to a lot of my clients. They may be very stressed and they want to communicate that stuff to me. I don't take it personally, nor do I take it on in my soul because that is not my life. I'm willing to help them out. But sometimes people come in hot and heavy into the gym and I'll listen, I'll give them 5 minutes and I get them into their exercise. And those are the days where I might make them push a little bit heavier weights, or I might even make them do some harder conditioning, especially hitting something like a heavy bag to release a lot of those emotions. But when a client shows up like that, hot and heavy, and maybe their mental health is all about stress in that moment, which is very regular with people, we can instantly change that through our training modalities. We can express our power, our will, and our intent through exercise in a very healthy and constructive way instead of a way that really diminishes the power of our own identity or soul or confidence. I love training for that purpose. And I know in times in my life, maybe not recently in the past 10 years or so, I would be very angry for whatever reason or very depressed for whatever reason. And I always found that my solace was going out into the mountains here in San Diego and trail running or hiking. And it would only take about 15 minutes for my nervous system to really calm down, for me to see the vista or get to the summit and realize, why am I so stressed about this? The solution would come to me as I was struggling up that hill, thinking, oh my gosh, I hate my life, blah, blah, blah. You get to the summit and you're like, what was I thinking? Like, I can do this. We can do that with our strength training as well in your home gym or with whatever equipment you have. I've seen it happen in my own life and with all of my clients. And if you use training as the umbrella, I guarantee all these aspects of mental health are going to get better. Now, finally, most people think they're building muscle, but they're actually building self-respect. So please remember that. Now, let's talk about mental health being a path and not really a destination. First off, I want to talk about equanimity. And the definition of that is the ability to remain centered while life fluctuates. This was a big Buddhist tenet that I learned about in my late 20s. And equanimity, I would describe it as this. Someone says something, it may come out wrong, and it may come out as an attack on you, but equanimity would say, I'm just going to process that for even a half second or a full second and realize that my buddy is maybe having a bad day. Maybe something happened to them at work or they got into a fight with their spouse and they don't mean it personally. And taking that split second to respond instead of becoming inflammatory, that is this middle path that we've already discussed. And me not being rocked by my emotions like, oh my God, this person is attacking me. I need to attack them back. Or, oh my God, they're attacking me and I am a piece of shit. It's neither of those things. It's right in the middle. I see this person coming at me with these words. They might not even need those words. I'm not going to take it personally. I'm going to just respond calmly and say, hey, Are you okay, bro? Like, what's going on? You don't seem like yourself today. 10 times out of 10, that is the route to go. Maybe not always, but equanimity is a very important thing. Remember that life will always have stress, uncertainty, setbacks, emotional highs and lows, loss, and adversity. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that I've gone through all of those things in the past year. Reframing my own life and what my mission on earth is, my God given gifts to help others by leading by example, I know that's why I'm here. So, in the context of my life's goals and what God wants for me, what does stress, uncertainty, setbacks, emotional highs and lows, loss, or adversity even matter? We need a global concept of what we are here for and what we're capable of doing instead of allowing all these little things to break us down brick by brick. I know life is tough. I know life's tough for everybody at certain points, and it can be hard to overcome certain things that happen to us, especially with things like loss. But if you are capable of realizing all the amazing things in your life, they will always supersede all these losses that we could have. Now, that leads into spirituality and perspective. For me, it helps me to remember why I work so hard. And again, I mentioned financial stress. Financial stress is a terrible thing to go through, but realizing what I want out of life, I want an experience with my partner. I want to grow old in a very healthy way with her. I want our cat to be healthy and happy. And I want all of my friends to have joy when interacting with me and prosperity in their lives. And taking a step back to pray and meditate and write these things down is a constant reminder of why you're here and this overall perspective that we should be obtaining, but we get too distracted to do this stuff. I have a lot of gratitude for my own health, and I work very hard on my own health. Gratitude for my relationships, my friendships, my partner, my immediate family and extended family, and also for all of my clients. All of my clients have become very close friends. A lot of them I consider family. And it's funny that they hired me for training, but the relationship grows to so much more. I'm someone that they can rely on, they can confide in their lives, they can run ideas by, and I can do the same because they're my friends too. And I never would have thought that when I became a personal trainer that I would actually have 50 different mentors in amazing topics and expertises. And it's a really, really cool thing. And I want you to think about how many people in your life you know that you can learn from, confide in, share with, and grow with. It's probably more than you realize right now. And if the concept of mental health is something that's on your mind, just think for every person that you converse with or hang out with, and they give you 5 percentage points extra, if you were at a 40% and then you hang out with three of your friends and you're at a 55% and feeling better, I would say that's a net win. Now, this perspective also reaches with purpose and service and perspective beyond yourself. I want to talk about purpose first. I mentioned that I believe I have God given gifts and being able to teach others, especially leading by example. I'll never forget that. My mom nailed that into me early, and I will always prioritize that in my life. With service, I used to volunteer with a group here in San Diego called Boys to Men. And unfortunately, during COVID, it kind of shut down, but it was a mentorship program where two other men and myself would go into certain schools in San Diego. And some of these young boys, they would be able to get out of class and have like kind of a circle conversation with these older mentors. And some of these stories were tragic that these young men had gone through with the loss of a family member. Most of them did not have fathers in the household, gang violence and relationships in their neighborhood. But seeing these young men grow through these conversations and having older men who are maybe more successful or more experienced was a really beautiful thing that I cherish in this experience. But I have not served in the past 4 or 5 years. And this idea of community service has really started to grow on my mind again as something that I'm missing. And I I made a pledge to San Diego Mountain Bike Association because I love nature, I love conservation, and I love riding bikes. And what this group does is they host these events where they go and they fix local trails, they build bridges, they build berms and jumps and obstacles, and it's all ordained with the city. So these public trails are maintained by this group. And that's something that I pledged some money to recently and was talking to my riding buddy that we should go out and help him build. And again, it's for everyone, but who gets the most from doing something like that? It's you by doing the activity. And that, again, if we talked about the mental health points, that's a plus 10. So if I was at a 40%, hung out with three friends, now I'm at 55%. Now I do some volunteer work. Now I'm at 65%. You can see how this math kind of adds up. The more you give, the more you get back. Finishing with the spiritual and perspective side of things, I think people who are more religious are typically happier. They just are. I've just seen it in my own life and that of my parents' life. And I don't necessarily practice in a church every single week, but prayer is a big part of my life and it makes me feel really good to do it. It doesn't matter what your religion is or if you're agnostic. I think finding some sort of spiritual practice where you can meditate or go out in nature and ground yourself, it will help a lot. So I'll end it at that. But I gave you some personal examples of why Diana and I work hard because we want the stability in our lives, and the purpose of doing so gives us a lot of joy. I would say all that stuff creates a meaningful life for us. With Strength Access, we want to help a larger group of people. I had really struggled in my career with the fact that only my wealthy clients could afford my training. And I tried to use social media as an avenue to kind of help people who couldn't pay for it. And with Strength Access, it has really become a much lower price point to the same level of coaching that I'll give my in-person clients. And that was really the purpose of it. Yes, it is how I earn an income with Diana, but if we can have a job of right livelihood, why would we not want to do that where we help other people? So that's a personal example. And it's building freedom through responsibility. And I think that is of utmost importance. Now, curiosity also protects mental health, I would say. And it's important to have intellectual expansion. And I've learned this from my clients, many who are smarter than me, and they can pass on their wisdom or way of thinking. I mentioned that with my computer programmer engineer client who teaches me all this crazy stuff about the internet and marketing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I know way more than I thought I would ever know with that stuff, but I just kept an open mind to it. So I recommend conversations with smart people, hearing new perspectives. Even if you don't like the perspective, you might be a hardcore conservative and you might be talking to a hardcore liberal. I guarantee you can find some common ground. And that is what we're missing in this country, that we're so polarized, back to the black and white. What about the middle path? What about the shade of gray? I'm from California. There are a lot of liberals here. Maybe I'm more moderate in my beliefs, but I can listen to both sides. Why couldn't I listen to both sides? I agree with certain aspects on both of their sides. So there's no harm in not picking a side of that. Remember the middle path. For me, I love reading. I started reading. It's funny. My family, they were always big readers. I went to UC San Diego and studied history, so I had to do a lot of reading and writing. And when I graduated college, I had this overwhelming feeling of I might not learn anything the rest of my life until I take it on myself. So I became a big reader. And oftentimes I'll read things twice to really get the reading comprehension down. But I love reading. Like I mentioned, I read books on all sorts of subjects, and it really gives me a lot of joy. That's why I do it every day. Podcasts, audio versions of all this stuff, whether you're doing an audiobook, podcast, or even just listening to a YouTube video. A lot of us do well with auditory style learning, visual as well, but the auditory over the past 15 years has been fantastic. I always do audiobooks. I do a lot of podcasts. Mostly I listen to podcasts on the science type stuff relating to health, but I'll do some others occasionally if they pop up on Joe Rogan or Andrew Huberman. Rob Wolf, really like that stuff. That's a great way of doing it. Learning new skills, and I'll share a couple personal things. Diana got into pickleball last year, and I held off. I didn't want to be a pickleball player, but I finally said, okay, I like ping pong. I like hanging out with you. I'll go play pickleball. And it's been a really fun new skill. I'm not as good as I wish I were, but it's like you get 1% better every single time you play pickleball. This is what I tell all of my personal training clients online and in person. Just get 1% better and then you are always making progress. So why should I not apply that to my life? But Diana is an incredible interior designer, and she's painted a lot of things that we have hanging in our household. And I started to realize that as a kid, probably up through fifth grade, I would spend hours drawing and sketching, just stuff I liked, mostly like Marvel superhero type deals and some of my own creations. And I just lost that. I didn't lose it for any reason. I just don't doodle anymore. Maybe because I'm not sitting at a desk in school, but we decided that we're going to replace some of our TV time with art. And my goal right now is pretty small, about 1 hour of artwork per week. And when you set small goals, eventually they expand. So it's all the cherry on top. But got a sketchbook yesterday. Diana has some pencils for me. And I even bought a book on how to draw what I plan on drawing. So I'm looking forward to that. Learning new skills is going to give you a lot of percentage points in your mental health and overall joyfulness. What about exploring new ideas? I would say I have taken it on myself to stay, I don't know if I'm ahead of the curve, but stay up to date with all the technology that is replacing old ways of thinking in our lives, especially with the AI stuff. It's interesting. We all have YouTube University, but that doesn't mean that YouTube University is going to teach you like it's going to teach me. We still have to do the work. So using things like AI to learn new concepts. I'll give you an example. I use AI how to learn everything I need to do for mountain bike maintenance. And still, I have to put the time into doing it. But it's really cool to have this teacher. And then it allows me to fine tune all my search engine on YouTube so I can find the video of exactly what I need to do, or other household skills. Or currently, I'm really researching how to get my videos on YouTube to pop better. And Diana's doing the same thing. So learning those new skills and kind of expanding our idea and mind frame has been very rewarding. And again, you're using your brain when you have to do this stuff. And if I have to say anything about mental health, the more you use your brain, the better your brain is going to feel. Remember, I start to tell my clients this now, that when we're training in the gym, we're not training our body, we're training our brain. And the bigger your brain is, the better your body is going to react to whatever you throw at it. And my final thought on that is curiosity protects mental health. Okay, let's move on to practical mental state tools. If you're anxious, ground yourself physically. Go outside, get in the grass, even stand on concrete, hopefully with bare feet. Last week, I was a little bit stressed. I was doing a lot of work on the computer, and Diana and I decided to go on a bike ride around the neighborhood. And we were probably 30 minutes into the bike ride, and I just turned around and I told her, man, it's interesting. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes to forget all of your stress and ground yourself. And then I thought later on in the day, maybe it doesn't take 30 to 45 minutes of stress. Maybe if you're super stressed, it takes that long. But if you're doing all the right things, maybe it only takes 5 minutes of you getting outside, getting sunlight in your eyes or on your skin, and breathing fresh air for you to chill out. Really good way to improve mental health. So if you're anxious, I'd recommend box breathing. That's, remember, something like an inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 8, hold for 4. The more cycles of that stuff you can do, you will notice that your blood pressure drops and your heart rate starts to lower. I do this all the time, maybe sometimes unconsciously. I will take a nap every day if I can, and usually that means I lay down for 10 to 20 minutes. Every time I get up from that nap, my body is totally relaxed, all my muscle tension is gone, and my heart rate's probably dropped 10 to 15 beats a minute. You can do that too. You can find 10 to 15 minutes. I already mentioned getting outside. I can't recommend that enough. You should do that because you are a human. You're not meant to be indoors all the time. Reducing stimulation. This is a tough one because everyone's got an iPhone, and you just got to be disciplined with that stuff. I have found that scrolling on Instagram is not really my favorite thing anymore. I kind of like YouTube and Substack better. Substack more because it's cerebral and you actually have to read. And YouTube because my algorithm is set up for things I just genuinely enjoy and on learning new skills. You can do that too. It just takes some work to reset your algorithm. You can research how to do that. So reduce stimulation as much as you can. Once you do that enough, you will not be comfortable with too much stimulation. There are certain grocery stores even I don't like to go in because the lights are too bright and there are too many colors. It's just too much for my body. And the longer you pay attention to this, you're going to find this new medium of what stimulation is right for you. I don't need a lot of stimulation in my life. Maybe in my early 20s, I like to go to parties and nightclubs and all this stuff and listen to loud music. Nothing wrong with loud music. I just like to listen to loud music when I'm training. And after that, I got to chill out. It's just, if you want to sleep well, if you don't want your heart rate to be too much or have too much stress or anxiety, you need to find a way to reduce the stimulation. Now, reducing anxiety, you need to move your body. So exercise, just like the examples I gave you earlier, and think about how you can simplify everything. There was this question that I heard in a Tim Ferriss book early on. This is maybe 16 years ago, but what would it look like if this were simple? And if you ask yourself that, what would it look like if this were simple? I'll give this podcast as an example. At first, I had multiple camera setups. I had this fancy mic, all this stuff. And then I found out it took me 30 minutes to set it up. And I was all stressed out. My heart rate was up and I wasn't able to articulate my thoughts. I finally decided one camera. I'm going to use my Rode mic. This allows me to podcast much more efficiently because I'm not all stressed out about my environment. And what does that look like in your life? Now, if you're overwhelmed, clean your environment, make your bed, a very Jordan Peterson thing to say. And we like a clean house. So I always make sure my home gym is very clean. Diana helps out with that because I rack gym equipment in disgusting gyms all day. And I'm not going to have my space be like that. It's too stressful. Take action on one thing, whether you attack the easiest thing on your to-do list. That's a great way of building momentum, or the hardest thing on your to-do list. Both are great. I like to start with easy and then work my way up to hard. But one good thing I would say about working on the hard thing first is that might have the umbrella effect on all the easy things. So that's up to you. You'll have to experiment with that on your to-do list. Stop doom scrolling. Enough said. Stop doom scrolling. Go do something else. Drink water and eat protein. That's an easy way to ground yourself. You got to eat food, so you might as well eat good food and go for a walk. How could a 15 to 20 minute walk not help? Just make sure you're in a nice area when you do it. If you're stuck emotionally, I can't remember where I learned this. I watched a video on YouTube and there was a doctor who would go see maybe like terminally ill cancer patients, like young kids. And there's this video of him and they caught this in the hospital and he's walking up to the door and then he takes a moment and he smiles, this big smile. And when he has this big smile on his face, he walks into the room. And it's the craziest thing. I've heard this so many times, but if you physically smile, you're going to be happier. You're going to ratchet up those enjoyment points and your mental health is going to improve. So maybe give that a shot today. Maybe smile at 3 different people throughout your day when you're interacting. I try and do this as much as I can, even though I can be a lot more stoic than I wish I were. I try to be very nice to every cashier and I try and talk to random people. And I don't always like to talk to random people because I talk to people all day long, but I have found the nicer you are to people, the nicer they are to you. And your experience is going to vastly improve when you do that. And I'm from Southern California, and people have their misconceptions about people from Southern California. Maybe not everyone's as nice as they are from the South or the Midwest, but I have a very rich life where people are very kind to me here. And I think I owe that because I'm very kind to other people. Even to gangster looking guys, I've given them a head nod or say, "What's up, bro?" And you'd be surprised. People are willing to say, "What's up, bro?" back to you and not have any animosity. So that's some good advice that I'm going to keep on following, and I hope you do too. But if you're stuck emotionally, you can call someone. Remember, talking to people is going to boost your emotional points. You can train. You should be doing strength axis minimum effective dose training. Enough said with that. Get sunlight on your skin if you're able to. And if you live in a cloudy place, maybe some red light would help you out there. Expose yourself to novelty and doing new things. And I had mentioned for me, that's pickleball and artwork or laughing intentionally. I live with a very funny person and she says funny things. So I try and laugh with her because it makes us both happy. Now, the important point is small physical interventions genuinely affect emotional state. So do not forget that. Let's talk about important nuances, a balanced perspective. Some people absolutely need therapy, counseling, medication, and professional intervention. I am a strength and health coach. I am nothing more. So again, if that is you, please seek out the help that you need. And it's easier than ever now. You can do a lot of telehealth or you can do telephone or Zoom counseling. I've had many clients do that too, and I think it can be very helpful for someone non-biased to assess your situation and help you through that stuff. So please do that. But you can still talk to your friends. You can talk to me. I'm here to help with that stuff. I still think, though, that lifestyle matters tremendously because you cannot separate your body from your mind, from the environment you live in, the relationships that you have, your purpose, and what you do with your life and your routine. And that's what Strength Axis is all about. So some final thoughts on mental health. It is not constant happiness. It is not zero stress, and it is not perfect motivation. First off, I don't like to use the word happiness. I like to use the word joyful because maybe happy implies that it's on a scale, a black and white scale, where the opposite of happiness is sadness, and joyfulness can be in between all of that. It's neither. It's not the high or the low. If you have zero stress, I don't know what kind of person you are because most of us have a little bit of stress. And remember, training is a use stress. It's a positive stress. And there are a lot of those things like getting out in the sun. It's stressing your body to adapt. Just don't get a sunburn. And perfect motivation does not exist. You have to rely on discipline. I know I'm not always motivated to do what I want to do, but if I'm disciplined, I just give it 5 to 10 minutes. Usually I can get going. I would say mental health is resilience, perspective, structure, meaning, connection, purpose, and adaptability. And I love that word adaptability because there's certain times in my life where I was kind of stressed, where you want things to stay the same. And I always think about technology. It's always going to be changing, and our modern landscape is always changing. But instead, I've kind of attached to this idea of being durable or adaptable, knowing that I will make the right decision when I need to. I just need to be prepared by keeping my mind open, by learning new things, and again, not being too stuck in my ways. That is a very male tendency that can really be harmful long term. And I think vulnerability really helps out with this stuff. And again, just knowing that you might start your day at 30 mental health percentage points, but if you talk with your friends, if you try something new, if you give back, if you exercise, if you get in the sun and ground yourself, you might have started at 30 and you might finish at an 80. And all these things can happen to a normal person, but you have to put the effort in. Right? Nothing happens to those who don't do anything. I want to finish with this final closing line that you should build a life you don't constantly need to escape from. Presence is a gift and it is very hard to cultivate. But when you cultivate that presence and this awakening that we have the capacity for in our own lives, things tend to really open up and we can carry joyfulness throughout our life and the purpose that we've discussed on this podcast. And I hope all of us can find that place in our life. But my job is to listen to you and help you out. So if you have any questions or you want to talk about anything, I'm happy to hear your messages and respond to you. And you know how to find me. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is really fun for me to lay out. This is episode 10 of the Access Method, and I am John Parker, and I will see you guys next time.